Okay, guys, welcome back to what Ed and I have decided could be six, could be seven. Gives you an idea of my mental state. I'm already on the beach in Greece. But for those people who are watching the recordings, welcome. Let's get into it. It's going to be a short call today because I think I've pretty much covered everything. And things obviously in the Discord have kind of stopped a little bit, which I think I kind of tried to, you know, talk on that topic before. It's definitely, it being a new product, I have to kind of solve that. Maybe no news is good news, in which case that's fucking great. I'm happy about that. We will soon find out because it will be the end of the month by the time I come back and who's going to be in for phase three. So hopefully you guys are all getting on with it. Hopefully you've enjoyed training, not exercising, and you have found some of it helpful. I would just say again, if you need help and you're not, that kind of group space is not your vibe, then do reach out. All right. I've had two questions. All right. I've had two questions come through on the WhatsApp, which is not ideal, but sure. Okay. And so we'll address the first one. So the first one was from Charlie and was like, was or is the Z Press supposed to challenge my mobility, flexibility? And the answer is, I mean, it is not in there for a mobility exercise. Um, so that is not, it's not designed that way. But how do you solve it? So there has been no other sort of context given. So I think I can see two issues. One is having your legs akimbo is causing a little bit of maybe some cramping in that sort of hip jeans pocket area. In which case, just narrow. If it's distracting you from the amount that you can lift, then that's absolutely fine. I think floor based, you're getting floor contact. That's where you want to be pushing from. Okay. So you can move your legs in. If you are, okay, so that's the first thing. The other restriction that there may be is, and I'll turn to the side here, is shoulder flexion. All right. So as I move my arm up, hang on, let me move away. As I move my arm up here, if that's the end of my, this is flexion, by the way, shoulder flexion, stops here, I need to get vertical. But I'm sat on the floor as I'm sat in the chair now. So the only other way to do that is to flare the ribs and go into the back. All right. That would be less than ideal because that means that your back now is doing shoulder stuff. You may well be able to get the weight up, but how much extra tension is going into that particular musculature uh, is minimal because because the force is coming from your ability to do that. So how do we solve that? Well, you solve the shoulder issue by bringing the legs in, okay, and then leaning back a little bit. Okay, so didn't think I was going to be doing this, even though I knew the questions. But if I then lean back a little bit this way, I can keep my rib cage down, and then that flexion is there. If I sit up, I have to flare. So you can just sit almost. It feels. It's going to feel like to you a little bit of a slouch. Okay, and the other thing after you've done that, and actually I'll post a video that I have on YouTube of me doing this alternately, but from a floor-based position, and you'll get the idea. The other thing could be just to do it with dumbbells, all right? And you may benefit from doing it either single arm, and you can see here I'm trying to keep my ribs down, giving myself a little bit of tactical feedback, or you can do it double, or you may even want to do it the way that it's done in the video that I will post into the group. Now, why can I do that? Well, a lot of the pushing stuff comes from that horizontal push, that bench press. So these are accessory exercises. And the way that I sort of think about accessory exercises is that we just want you to be able to get into a decent amount of volume. All right. The strength stuff is done from the squat, the hack squat, the bench press. Those are the big building blocks. The rest of it, although they are important in the program, they are superseded by those other big exercises. All right. So to solve the shoulder flexion position, or that one, because you might be flaring the ribs, is to bring the legs in, maybe even go from an Arnold position, which means in front, so you're front loaded here, that keeps the ribs down, and to push through there. That lean back enables you to get to that vertical position. So do try that, and you may find that that helps with any shoulder discomfort that you may be having, although nobody said that. The other option is if you have lovely shoulders and you can get vertical, and that's not it's actually a hip issue. What I like to do is sit on something, all right? And I use a yoga block, and I sit on the yoga block just sort of where my coccyx is, and that helps me just lift me into a little bit of anterior tilt. You can do it with a rolled up hoodie. You can do it with a rolled up towel, yoga block, or a plate. I mean, that will be less comfortable, but you're only there for 10 reps, all right? And that will enable you to just maintain that sort of straddle position, which is legs akimbo, and then you can sit a little bit forward into it, almost like a hip hinge, all right? And if you don't have that movement available to you, flat on the floor, just raising your arse up a little bit can help with that. So those would be my two, so without too much other, I didn't get too much other information, so those would be my two solutions to the obvious problems that I see, all right? The other question was from yours truly, Ed, which was, well done, is about your little muffin tops and how to attack this. I want to keep it in line with what the main objective of this program is, which is everybody's here to put weight on, okay? So the big thing is that because you're eating in a calorie surplus, you are going to be, hopefully, building muscle, because you're going to see that progression in terms of amount of tonnage, kilos that you're lifting per week, which we call total volume. If that's going in the right direction and your weight's going up, you're good. Okay, given the directive and the direction that this program is supposed to go. Now, lots of you, most of us, it's all great trying to put weight on, and in our minds we probably have an expectation of what that weight looks like, all the way from like super dense bodybuilders, absolutely shredded, feathers, strings, the whole thing, to the other thing. People are like, oh right, like I'm just going to end up I'll be strong, but I'll end up looking like a potato. Where you sit on that scale and what your expectation is a very subjective thing. But gaining some fluff, and I'll call it fluff, is par for the course. Okay? Now, why is it ending up on here rather than here, rather than in the face and the jowls? Some of that is a genetic thing. All right? We can't, just like you can't say, oh, I've got a fat tummy, so I'm going to do a load of sit-ups and I'm going to burn fat from particularly that area. That's not how it works. All right? But it also works in the opposite way, is in that you can't like eat excess calories and then be like, oh, come on, don't go on the hips, don't go on the hips, don't go on the hips. Okay? So some of it is sort of a genetic thing. Some of it will be driven by the genetics, but also what your start point was. So I would have to dig out the literature on this, but from memory, let's say you'd actually done a diet phase and you'd got pretty shredded before, all right, and you were carrying weight mainly around the old big barrel here. If you got down to say sub 10% body fat, for example, and you've got sick abs, obviously you've lost quite a lot of weight, and then you think, right, okay, now I want to start rebulking. There is some evidence to suggest that the way that you gain fat the next time would be different. All right, I'm going to hold my hands up here and say I don't know why that is. All right, I don't know why that is, but there is some difference. All right, so sometimes it can be like the speed at which you put that weight on. Sometimes it can be, yeah, again, I'm just sort of like getting into the weeds here. So I am going to hold my hands up. I probably, and if it's helpful to you, particularly Ed, but maybe other people are, kind of interested in this kind of thing, then maybe I can dig that up. I'll ask a few questions to some people on the old Instagrams. But we see that when the people have, say, done like bodybuilding shows or like physique shows, where that fat then comes back on once they push into an excess calories is different to where it may have been before. I do not understand the mechanisms to that. I think because we're not thinking about going down to come up, we're going up from where we are. I think that probably could make a difference as well. It's, like from where your start point is. Okay. If you are already carrying a little bit of, I don't think anybody started here absolutely shredded, right? I mean, shredded to me is like sub 10. You're having to do a lot of work to stay there. It's quite an uncomfortable thing. Your social life is completely poo. Your libido is in the fucking toilet, all that kind of stuff. I don't think anybody's starting there, but there will have been different degrees of leanness across this cohort of people, and everybody will be different. Again, I think the main driver here is the genetic thing. It's like, and that is what I think they call like epigenetics. So that is kind of to a degree predisposed. However, where you have started from may make a difference, and I will try my best to kind of source that out because there's something in the back of my mind. I think probably the more important thing, and I'm going to assume, and then once I've finished this rant, Ed, we can talk. Maybe you can talk about this, and it won't come through on the camera, so we'll do it. So we'll do it privately, not, and then maybe I can do a second video. But it's an interesting thing putting weight on because, like I said, everybody kind of like they have this expectation of what it's going to look like, but they haven't really thought through all the steps because a lot of you, all of us at some stage, you are overeating. It kind of feels uncomfortable. You may not have been there before, all right? You may not have been at this weight before. What happen is people either have these sort of natural limits that they fluctuate in, or if you're a bit more keen on your diet and training and all that kind of stuff, we kind of go up and then we come down, we come up, we come down. We sort of yo-yo between what I call like these red flags. Now we have made it clear, I want to put weight on, and you may now be pushing past a weight that you've ever been, all right? And in Ed's story, as a man who is in shape, knows his way around the gym, you may be at that level now. So you are pushing into this sort of like, oh, I've never seen my physique look like this before. And I think the most important thing is just to keep the goal in mind. All right. We'll get to where you want to get to. All right. And then if you are happy with that, maintain it. If not, you could then slowly diet back down. And then hopefully with the muscle that you've gained before gives you a new starting point. All right. But gaining fat is par for the course. Okay. So I would say if it's causing you some sort of, I wouldn't say discomfort, but if you're kind of looking at yourself going, I don't know. I mean, it's a subjective thing, and I haven't asked these questions, but I know from my own personal experience, there have been times where I've wanted to kind of stop because I just don't like the way that I look. Like I think I look better when I've got abs, for example. But you have to kind of keep the goal in mind. But what I would say is that it's going to challenge how important that goal was in the first place. We've been at this now 6-7 weeks. You're not going to have gained huge amounts of weight, all right? We're talking 2, max 3 kilos. I don't think anybody's gone up past that. These are not things that you can't like send in the other direction with an equal amount of time, but then that may undervalue the goal at the beginning. So I would suggest to you to go back, look at the goal at the beginning, see whether that is still the same thing. And if it is the same thing, just take comfort in the fact that gaining some fat is par for the course. I would keep in mind that sort of 0.25 to half a kilo per week. All right, those are 2 numbers of which I would say that is a good rate of gain. Now, how you feel about that gain is, again, it's a subjective thing. All right, if you're gaining weight faster than that, then I would say, yeah, okay, kind of pull back a little bit, because also you need to sort of adjust your emotional level to how your physique is looking. All right. I could understand if you were gaining weight but not seeing those sort of gains in the gym, you might be like, oh, well, is the juice worth the squeeze here? For me, that is a different conversation, and I would want to talk to you probably personally on a level. This is anybody in the group now. And have a look at the training that you're doing. Let's have a look at the spreadsheet. Let's have a look at how you feel in the gym. and maybe try and solve that issue of why you're not seeing those increases in volume that would justify that extra weight gain. I think I've spoken enough on that issue now. People need to digest that. And to be honest with you, that's all I've got to say this week, because I can only really coach the way that in my mind, I set it up was the only really I can coach is with information. I can't just keep second guessing, because I think there's a chance that it could be confusing. So I'm going to go with the whole no news is good news. I hope you are still enjoying it. We will see at the polls in the next week whether people want to stay. There is, on this particular program, I wrote it for 12 weeks. There is another bit. You push up into more strength stuff. You're getting up into sort of the 87, 90, 95%. It's slightly different. All right. When I did that, I all but canned off the conditioning because I found it difficult to not keep pushing myself on the conditioning. So it was easier for me just not to do it. If you're trying to put weight on, that's great because there's less energy out. But there is a phase 3. I'd love to see all of you there. So just start thinking about that there now. And if you're in, I'd love to know ahead of time. That would be very, very helpful because I'm just about to go away on holiday. It's going to be a mad dash to get that all done over that bank holiday weekend. In fact, it's not going to happen because I've got a big party and then a stag do. So I'm going to be absolutely in the bin. So if you could do it now, that'd be great. That's it. I'm going to cut this video here. Ed's still here. Me and him can have a chat. Thank you very much. Carry on.